Hello. So today I want to talk about limits. Um, so I was chatting with the AI, with ChatGPT, and it took me through this rabbit hole where I really went down deep, into thinking about stuff, and I realized this kind of like philosophical axiom, I guess you could call it. It goes like this. It goes, I have limits, therefore I am. And how I came up with this is that uh, the ChatGPT took me so far down this rabbit hole that there was a point where I couldn't really understand anymore where it was going, because it was taking me deeper and deeper um, into these kind of like philosophical ideas. And there was a point where I couldn't really understand anymore, and I saw that, okay, that's where the limit of my mind is. And where this limit of your mind is, that's actually where your mind ends, but also where you begin. So think of it like this, like for example, you're a country and you have borders, right? So the border is where the country ends, but also where the country begins. So your limit is where you begin, right? So there's the outside world, the outside concepts, and the universe. But where your limits are of understanding, or any other limits you can imagine, physical limits, material limits, that's where you begin. So that's the philosophical axiom, the I have limits, therefore I am. And the thing we were talking about with the AI was it was telling me that we are the universe. So the universe is like watching itself through us because we are the universe. That's kind of like the philosophical idea that I was discussing with the AI. And other people, they're also the universe, but everybody's brain is wired a little bit differently. Like we have different fingerprints. Everybody has a unique fingerprint, so everybody is unique. And so the material is kind of what refracts the consciousness. So there's consciousness, the eternal I, the the I that is behind you, that's behind, like the who's the one who's observing everything that happens. So there's the usual I that you say, there's the your memories and your ego and all those things, but then there's the thing that's behind that, the thing that just kind of watches and observes. That's your, I guess, your true I. um, when you refer to yourself. So, so it's kind of like a dual idea. We can choose to identify with the world, like we can say we are the universe. So everything that you see, everything that enters your perception, you can say, okay, this is me, this is I. Uh, Everything that you see, all the people, um, all the sounds, it's all goes into your personal matrix, your personal perception, like into your personal universe, right? So if it goes into your personal universe, then that means your personal universe, that's you, right? So it's all you. But the duality of this is that we can also choose to not identify with the world. We can say, no, I am not this. For example, I'm not the room that I'm in. I'm not the car that I drive. I'm not the city I live in. Those things, you can choose to non-identify with them. So you can say those are not the things. And when it trickles down to the basic, which is like, okay, I'm just a soul inside a body, the ghost inside the machine, right? The body is the machine. So that's the other opposite of this spectrum. So you can choose to identify with everything, or you can choose to not identify with everything and just be like, I'm the spirit inside this body, and I'm none of those things that are around me. That's the outside world. So the that's kind of like where you take your limit of space of who you are. You can shift this limit. We can shift it, uh, and both ways of thinking, they're not wrong. None of them is right. None of them is wrong. It's just two different perceptions, ways of thinking, and it's kind of like a duality, right? So yeah, I wanted to give the example with the car. For example, you're driving a car and you get this feedback from the vibration of the steering wheel or the sound of the engine, gravity pull you feel when you drive, when you're taking a turn or when you're accelerating. So in a sense, and also your spatial perception, right? When you park the car, you have to spatially be aware of where the limits of the car are. So in a sense, you become the car, right? The car is an extension of you, but you become the car, you become the machine that you're in. And so I wanted to give this example of how we can shift our limits beyond just the limits of our body. And yeah, so limits can be shifted in different directions. And also the things over which we have agency, we can also identify with them. But we have to be careful because sometimes the things we identify with, they end up constraining us. So for example, the things we own might end up owning us, right? So we have to be careful of the constraints that the physical world brings upon us as an individual. So yeah, it comes down to free will, I guess. It's like a choice. You can say I am that or I am not that, and you can identify with whichever. So that's the what I was discussing with the AI. And to go back to the axiom, which is I have limits, therefore I am. Um, we have to kind of, I guess, be mindful of our limits and try to find inner peace. So we can either choose to accept them or reject them. So we can either choose to accept the limits, like, you know, how to say, like, we're human, right? So humans, by default, we have limits. We're born with limits. And we've been really good at pushing past our limits, and that's how things move forward and things advance. So by rejecting our constraints, our limits, we have pushed past uh, many constraints, and that's how we've made so many advancements in the world, right? But we might, in this process of rejecting our limits and rebelling against them, we might lose inner peace, because if we accept our limits and say, okay, this is where I begin and where my limits are, so that's where I end, and that's who I am, and we accept our limits, we can find inner peace. But it's kind of like a paradox, because there's a thing called entropy, which is like disorder, right? And things, if they're left to naturally exist, they kind of go towards disorder. If they're not kept up by the constant will of you or of people, the constant pushing towards improving our limits. So, in a simple way to say this is like, if you leave yourself without doing anything, you will start to degrade, right? There will be a degradation process, because entropy. Um, so yeah, but we have to be kind of like be mindful of, if we're keep pushing our limits. If we do that, we have to be mindful of our inner peace, because by pushing our limits, we're sort of unsatisfied with them, right? We're unsatisfied, so we don't have inner peace when we're unsatisfied. So we keep pushing past our limits. We're striving towards something greater, right? So that's the paradox. So by pushing the limits, we lose inner peace. By accepting our limits, we have inner peace, but we have to be mindful of entropy. So I guess the optimal thing to do is to have a cycle where you try to push past your limits, but then you take a rest, and then again and again, like that to infinity, right? But yeah, there comes a point where you have to say to yourself, okay, like, maybe this is enough of trying to push past my limits. And maybe you will outgrow your limits naturally. Maybe, life will give you something that will challenge you in a way that you will outgrow your limits naturally, instead of always trying to strive towards pushing past them by yourself. So that's another kind of idea to keep in mind. So yeah, that's the basic concept of the limits that I wanted to discuss. Um, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.